Hey there friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again. And today I've got another Destiny 2 video for you guys, this time showcasing one of my builds that I'll be using when the brand new Onslaught Horde mode drops next week with Into the Light. And it's important you farm for the main weapon for this build this week because it is the Tusk of the Boar Waveframe Strand Grenade Launcher that can be found in Iron Banner. If you don't like PvP, I understand, but it is vital that you get this because it is a great addition to any PvE arsenal. It is going to be very useful. Now, I would personally like a Envious Assassin and Chain Reaction roll, but I got Slice and Chain Reaction, which works perfectly for this build specifically. Reason being, I am running a Strand Titan with a focus on Suspend and the Abeyant Leap exotic leg armor. So the reason I'm doing this is survivability is absolutely key when you are one, playing with randoms, and two, in a brand new mode you don't know a lot about, especially if you want to progress to higher difficulties. The other nice thing about Suspend is that you can really control areas as enemies are pushing you, trying to get to your objective. So if your teammates aren't killing them fast enough, you can kill a bunch of enemies with your Waveframe Grenade Launcher or other weapons, and you can also suspend them at the same time. So I think that works out really well for a mode we don't know a whole lot about yet. I'm also running Tiku's Divination. However, you can swap this out. Say you want to use Polaris Lance, or maybe instead of a exotic you want to use the Amit or some other legendary solar weapon. I think solar works really well with this season's mods, so that's why I am going to run that. I'm also running the solar Apex Predator rocket launcher just because I think it works out very well for this build specifically. It is still very good despite some nerfs we've gotten in the recent past, but I do think you can swap this out as well. Say you want to run a Gallahorn as your teammates are running legendaries, then you can always swap out Tiku's for something else. There's a lot of different flexible options there. This is just a build that I was personally running that I think I'm going to start with. Now, as far as my subclass goes, I am using the standard stuff with the Shackle Grenade. Again, this might change. If the content, especially early on in the activity, is easy enough, I'll probably swap to a Grapple instead of Shackle Grenade, but I'm going to start with this. I'm also using Banner of War because it's still pretty broken, even though I do think this will get nerfed before the final shape, if I had to guess. And then also Dranger's Lash, obviously that pairs well with the, it's the only thing that pairs with the Abeyant Leap leg armor. So I'm also running the Thread of Mind, Continuity, Transmutation, and then Propagation as my fragments. As far as the mods go, pretty straightforward. Heavy Ammo Finder, Solar Targeting, Strand Siphon. We got Focusing Strike, Heavy Handed, Strand Loader. Void Damage Resist, but you can change this depending on the activity modifiers. Solar and Strand Reserves. We've got Solar Weapon Surge and Solar Scavenger. And then finally Distribution Outreach, Time Dilation. Because of the different artifact mods like Blast Radius, which obviously works with your grenade launcher, you're going to have as many armor charges as you want, and that's going to really help for damage with your rocket launcher. A Kindling Trigger and Torch, as well as Flint Striker, these are going to be helpful with whatever solar weapon you want to run. That's why I prefer those. Unraveling Orbs and then Horde Shuttle will be good for your Strand weapon, and then finally Argent Ordnance is very, very good. This is what's going to help buff your damage for your rocket launcher. Also Overload rocket launchers in case there are Overload champions, and then Dragon's Bright helps as well. So overall, the way this build works, you're going to want to pop your barricade first, and that's going to activate Slice for your Tusk of the Boar. Once you do so, you will be severing enemies using Chain Reaction. If there's a bunch of enemies nearby, obviously there'll be a bunch of explosions. But if it's a single enemy like a Tormentor, like a Wyvern, those are really nice to not only suspend, but also sever as well, so that way you can take them out very easily and they do less damage, because I've seen it too many times with randoms specifically where they don't worry about the Tormentor or the Wyvern enough and they don't know how to take it down. So having something to control those types of enemies is very, very important, and I think Suspend in general will be very advantageous for a activity like this, just because of how many enemies are going to be pushing you. Instead of normally in Destiny 2, we've always been pushing the enemies and going on the attack, whereas here you're going to be a little bit more defensive depending on how many enemies there are. Now, if they're not dense enough, if there's not enough enemies and they're not chunky enough, maybe it won't matter as much. Yes, you could do more damage with the Suspend Titan on the Strand subclass, and I do think once we have the new activity mastered, that might be the direction to go. But when starting out, especially if you are playing with random players, if you're not playing with a consistent fire team, this is a build that I think will work out very, very well. You can clear adds no matter which weapon you're using. You can do pretty good DPS as well, a little support DPS with your energy weapon. And I think all around this does a lot of the things that will be beneficial in a horde mode. So that's why I wanted to showcase this. I will have some other builds as well for other subclasses, not only for the Titan, but also for the Warlock. Those are the two main classes that I'm going to be running with Into the Light. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this content turns out, seeing how effective different builds are, what modifications I have to make. But I'm going to leave it to you guys. What changes would you personally make to a build of this nature? What changes do you think you should see I should do if this build is not maybe something that you would use, or if it's something that you think can be improved upon? Because I'm always open to ideas. I think in general, we don't crowdsource ideas enough within the community. Everyone likes to say, okay, this is broken, this is fantastic, this is terrible. And instead of just coming together and having a meeting of the minds where we can all decide, okay, this build is effective if you are a more conservative player. Say you're a player who wants to stay alive. You want to be the support player on your team. You want to make sure that your teammates, if they die, you're there to res them while also controlling the battlefield, while also making sure that you stay alive. You have plenty of survivability as well. And I think all of that is important. When you see the top players and they put out builds, sometimes it's the best build for them, but it might not trickle down well enough for everybody because you need a certain type of gameplay style, well, and you also need a certain type of fire team to also help each other out, because everybody is clearing adds together. Whereas if one player gets overwhelmed, you have to cover for them, and you need to make sure you can do a bit of everything. That was a little bit of a rant on top of just talking about the build, simply because I think there's nuance when it comes to build crafting and when it comes to putting these build videos out. I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page on the type of builds that I make and who I make them for. Anyway, my name is JoPa. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Helps me out tremendously. Shows you want to see more Destiny 2 content. Like I said, I'll have more builds in the lead up to Into the Light and then beyond as well, once we have the content in hand and I can really tinker with these and make them perfection. And I hope you stick around for that. My name is JoPa. Have a good one. I'll catch you all later.